God when it comes to the scriptures. As PJ talked about theology and practical principles, well, I'll be doing the same thing. There's some theology, but there's a lot of practical principles we're going to talk about as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I want to be the best parent I can be. Parents of teens, we connect, collaborate, and learn together. Not just us as adults, but also with the teens. Things have changed, and Brother Levy kind of touched on that a little bit. Things have changed a little bit where we almost have to collaborate sometimes even with our children. It's on. I think I know how to work this thing, right? Okay, I want to be the best parent I can be. And some of you recognize this photo. It's a photo from a TV show that has discontinued now, but it's This Is Us. And it's one of those that if I wasn't there to see it, I'd tape it. Because it's one of those TV programs that you just love because it almost mirrored real life in a sense. Almost mirrored real life, but remember, it was a TV show. It was scripted. It was written for the outcome. Our lives are not like that. Our lives are not like that. We don't have that particular benefit, per se. But we were all teenagers once. Or did we forget that? Or did we forget that? I want to be the best parent I can be. You figure teens today, they're no different than we are. Very eclectic, right? Diverse. Diversities have changed from what we were when we grew up. But you look at diverse hairstyles, the way we dressed. I remember once when we were young men, we had afros and wore shirt tails out. And, people get chastise you for wearing shirt tails out. Why are you wearing your shirt tail out? Put your shirt in. So there were different things that we went through back in those days, just like there are things that our kids go through today. And then you think about, we bad about saying, well, back in my day, think about it, we don't have the scowl that Clint Eastwood has on that face, but back in our day, as he mentioned, if you ask why, you got that backhand. Well, some of us did. Anyway, you got the backhand. There was no questioning of adults. You just did what you were told. Do what you're told. These day and age, sometimes kids will ask why. And sometimes that can be a good thing. We have to understand sometimes when kids ask why, sometimes they're inquisitive about why is this happening? Why is a boy wearing a dress in school? So we do not want to shut our kids down completely because what we will do is extinguish their creativity. We do not want to extinguish their creativity. Now, there's a tone to why. There can be a tone to why. So you can determine what that tone is when they said why. All of a sudden now that's back in the day tone when you don't tolerate those kind of things. But when someone said why Poppy, why Mommy, why Daddy, I mean that's a good reason to ask why. So some of those things we want to tolerate. But we all have those red flags, those warning signs. Sometimes people say, caution, they're becoming a teenager now. They're becoming a teenager now. And they throw up those warning signs to us sometimes, and we react to some of that. But remember, it's your household. We need to understand that we should not allow external influences to over-influence us. For instance, you may look back at your own teen years through rose-tinted glasses, but don't forget that this tumultuous time of life comes with a lot of stress. And you think we had stress? The kids today have a lot more stress. Teens are under an enormous amount of pressure to do well in school, excel at a lot of activities, follow all the current fads and trends, and to fit in with their friends. A lot of stress on our teens today. And we have to understand that parenting is a two-way street in some cases. Good parenting takes all this into consideration with all the child's development. But let's not forget about social media. Our social media back in the day was, hey! You know, when I lived in a little town, Town Creek, Alabama. Yeah, it was really a small town. And they had two streets called the back line and the front line. I lived on the front line. And you get people called on the back line, they call, hey, Dulum, come home. They could call from the front line to the back line. Yeah, that was our social media, so to speak. But today, our kids have to deal with social media. So we must realize that parenting is a two-way street with much more than it was in years past. Today, as we teach them, we also learn from them. We also learn from them. You know, kids will speak up. And we're happy sometimes when they speak up, sometimes. So today, a national crisis for teens. That national crisis is stress. The national crisis is stress. You think about the amount of schoolwork kids have to do today. Think about social media. Kids involved in social media. They're worried about what they're saying about me. Am I too fat? Am I too skinny? Do I wear the proper clothes? Do I wear the proper labels? Kids are stressed out over all this stuff. And of course, then they all the extracurricular activities. Worry about college applications, their soccer practice, other academic things that are going on, as well as their athletic activities. So, a national crisis for teens. We find ourselves in a true national crisis, collectively facing a devastating epidemic of stress, anxiety, and depression among our youth. So much so that in 2021, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a rare public health advisory on the topic of stress with teens. In 2019, 1 in 3 high school students reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, an overall increase of 40% from 2019 to 2009. So this is 2019. Imagine what it is probably today. The takeaway is clear. Living with toxic stress is harming a large portion of our youth. And as the adults in the room, if we want to be the best parents we can be, it is our job to do something about it. In the ever more competitive race to secure the best possible future, students jam-pack their schedules with advanced placement classes, fill their waking hours with resume padding activities, and even sabotage relationships to get ahead. Sabotage relationships to get ahead. You think about kids who need friendships. Back in the day, you could talk about your good friends, your best friends. I mean, some of those people I'm still friends with today. I still know them. I still get text messages from them. We call each other or text each other on birthdays and things like that. But kids today, sometimes they sabotage those relationships because, guess what? The relationship is not important. What's important is, all these other activities I have going on right here. All my padding activities and advanced placement classes, those are things that are important to them because we have told them those are the most important things in life. This drive to optimize performance has resulted only in skyrocketing rates of anxiety, depression, and even self-harm among our youth. The past several decades have given rise to a professionalized childhood. A professionalized childhood. Think about that. A professionalized childhood. When every waking moment of a child's life is managed to maximize their potential, including academics, athletics, and extracurricular activities. There was one child that talked about the fact that she came home and she actually was a track athlete. She would run, practice after school. She got home at 8 o'clock at night. Now she got to do homework. She does homework. It's 10 o'clock at night. All of a sudden, she got on her social media. And by the time she got to bed, it's midnight. It's midnight. Then she's getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning so she can review a test that she has the next day. So basically, this kid's sleeping 5-6 hours a night. That's not very healthy for our teens. That's creating even more stress. So, as I mentioned, Brother Pitts taught a lesson here recently. It said, be a prodigy and not a prodigal. And he was talking to our young people as they were graduating, whether it's high school or college or whatever. But we must understand the kids must have a foundation. Must have a foundation. Brother King talked about that. He talked about the tree, the roots, that foundation. That foundation. We cannot concentrate on all these other things and forget about the true foundation that our kids need. And that foundation is building a foundation through biblical principles. Build it through biblical principles. There's so many people say, how is the Bible relevant today? You can find that especially among young adults. You see them falling out of the church. Which means they probably don't have that foundation that they truly need. But right now, we cannot afford for our kids not to have that foundation. But build it based on biblical principles. And you know what? It starts at an early age, which we'll get into in a little while. And Brother PJ kind of covered this one this morning as well. Deuteronomy chapter 6 basically tells, when Moses was talking to the Israelites, it was after the 10 Commandments were laid out, and he was saying, these commandments that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you're walking on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. And so sometimes we depend on the church, that we talk about them on Sunday morning, and then they hear them again on next Sunday morning. That those biblical principles are not there the other 6 days of the week. But 3 years of research by researcher George Bonner regarding children reveal many surprising outcomes, including the fact that a person's moral foundations are generally in place by the time they are 9 years old. That means by the time a kid is 9 years old, they already have their moral foundation. Which means that if we have not set a foundation, if those roots are not there, these kids are getting it from somewhere else. They're getting it from somewhere else. So when we see them talking back, hear them talking back, yelling, throwing fits, guess what? We have to take some responsibility for that. Because that foundation has not been established anywhere else. In most cases, people's spiritual beliefs are irrevocably formed. Irrevocably formed when they are preteens, and they believe they know what they need to know spiritually by age 13. By age 13. Sometimes when kids become age 13, that's when some parents decide, well, I need to start raising them now because they're becoming a teenager. Well, you know what? It's too late. It's too late in some cases. Research also revealed that those attending church and have spiritual foundations experience less anxiety and stress during the pandemic. This is just not kids. This is everyone. People have spiritual foundations and attending church experience less stress. They had the hope that is within us. The hope that is within us. Had less stress during the pandemic. This should also hold true as we go through trying times in our communities. Think about teen deaths, shootings. Every day, if you watch the news, every day in our community, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds killing each other. And we wonder why, and they wonder what's the answer. Biblical foundations. We have to get the word out. We have to continue to teach our young people. And the thing is, we try to hide this from young people. Don't hide it from them. Talk to them about it. Every time it happens, sit them down. I remember when my kids were, they're adults now, they were teenagers, things would happen at work. Things I see young adults doing. And I would come home and I said, hey, let's, during dinner time, when I said, hey, look, I saw something today. Tell me what you think about this. I would ask them questions. Talk about learning from them. sometimes you ask them questions and you have it. If you're open and they know you're open, you get some answers that help you lead your kids to where they need to be. Or where God wants them to be, I should say. Where God wants them to be. But sometimes we hide these things from them. I don't want them to see this about them. You know, it's there. They're going to see it. They know more about social media than we do. They're pulling up more stuff than we are. We gave them the devices. They got them. They're finding it. So you think you're hiding something? You're not. All you're doing is hiding how you can guide them through it. How you can guide them through it. So it's important that we understand that. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child. PJ talked about that earlier today. Train up a child and where they have them to go. When they're old, they will not depart from it. Training them up. It's not up to the schools. It's not up to the churches. It actually begins at home. Begins at home. I mean, Brother Pitts is teaching. We're teaching on Wednesday night. You know, Brother Looney's talking about testings and trials and temptations. Do we go home and discuss those with our kids? Ask him, were you listening to today's sermon? Brother Pitts talks about the fact that his dad would always ask him, you know, so what did the preacher say today? And sometimes we need to ask our kids, what did you learn today at church? What did you talk about? What were your discussions? What do you think about it? Train them up. We cannot just allow them to exist and feel like, well, they got a roof over their head, they got clothes, they got food. I'm doing all I'm supposed to do. No, it's more than that. It's more than that. Today's modern family. Think about it. Is this today's modern family? You got the dad sitting here, you got the remote trying to find out what the scores are on ESPN, mom's on the phone, both kids got a device. It's dinner time. There's no conversation going on. There's no conversation going on. But today's social influencers, Brother King talked about Flip Wilson this morning. Think about this. The name of this sitcom was Modern Family. That was the name of the sitcom. So they're sitting here. They got devices. He's got a tablet. She's on a computer. They all each on a phone. So our kids are allowed to watch this stuff. So they figure that's okay. This is the way society is today. And they'll tell you, well, you know, this is what they do today. It's okay to say, not in my household. Not in my household. So expectations. We talked about the fact that the phrase here at Woodland Park, an environment where excellence is expected. That should be the same phrase in our home. Now, sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth when I talk about up here about the stress on kids, but you know what? They got to have some expectations. If not, guess what? There are no expectations if you don't give them those expectations. But the name of the sitcom was Modern Family. So people feel like, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way it's supposed to be. Trying to think of this cartoon, I can't think of the name of it now. Well, this kid was always talking back to his parents, and it was on Fox. I can't remember, but I couldn't watch it because it was just because he always had something smart to say. The Simpsons, yeah, The Simpsons. The Simpsons. I mean, and people would let the kids watch that, and I go, man, this kid just like, I watched it a few times ago. I can't watch that. I cannot watch that, because that was back in the day, that'd have been, you know, that backhand slap you would have gotten. So who's in charge? I mean, you see this kind of stuff happening. I mean, I tell my wife sometimes we'll go somewhere and I sit down, I'm people watching. People watch. Just watch the kids into the stores and how they're talking back to the parents and get in the parents' face like, I'm equal to you. I'm equal to you. Or parents talk to them, totally droning the parents out. Not I'm not listening. I'm not listening. We have those situations. But when you see this happening, you can tell there's no foundation. There's no foundation. So once again, you know who's in charge. You know, when it looks like kids are hog tiring their parents, you know. Kids feel like We're in charge. We're in charge. But using biblical principles, Ephesians chapter 6, 1 through 3. We all know well. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that you may have a long life. Because back in the day, if you didn't honor your parents, they say, I'll take you out. I brought you in this world. I'll take you out of this world. You know? So you want to have a long life. I don't think what the scripture's talking about, but that was reality for me. That was reality for me. But then, as PJ talked about this morning, parents, invest in your children. Invest in your children. Ephesians 6 and 4. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Do not provoke your children to wrath or to anger. But bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Of the Lord. Again, you can't start raising them at 13 years old. You got to start this very early. Best parents invest in their children. Paul's letter to the disciple Timothy, 2 Timothy. Brother Looney talked about it this morning. PJ talked about it this morning. When he talks about, do not let them despise your youth. When Paul was talking to Timothy. But he also said in 2 Timothy 1 and 5, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice. So think about this. First lived in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. So obviously, he was properly trained. He had sincere faith because of what his parents, what his grandmother and his mother had taught him. So it's important that we do the same thing. So being the adults in the room. In her recent book, Never Enough, award-winning author Jennifer Wallace stated that the parents she met in research who had the healthiest achievers sometimes held their kids back. We talk about the stress now. We're going back to the stress level. Sometimes they held their kids back. They did not encourage every opportunity. They put up guardrails. Guardrails. As parents, we have to put up guardrails. We have to understand how to put up guardrails. Your child may be driving it, but only because they are put in an environment where they're getting that social contagion from their peers. Attitudes and behaviors can be contagious. Children and teens' anxiety and mental health can worsen simply by being around kids who are also stressed out about school and extracurricular activities. Again, Brother King mentioned it. Who's near them? Who's near your kids? Parents must be the adults in the room and step in, insisting that your kids slow down, concentrating on their priorities. You've got to set some priorities. Everything can't be a priority. Everything can't be a priority. If you got kids and if someone's saying, okay, I expect all A's from you, and I expect you to be a great basketball player, a great football player, and I want you to run track, and I want you to play soccer too, by the way, and the kid's going, what's my priority here? What is my priority here? Everybody's not a great basketball player, a great football player. It's okay to want something if they're good at it, but they're not good at everything. But I told parents before in the past, I've talked to people, and they said, so what are the grades like? Well, they're doing great in school. I said, well, shouldn't it be your priority? Well, they may be able to get a scholarship in football. I said, they get a scholarship because of grades. I said, you thought about that, an academic scholarship? Wouldn't you rather your kid get an academic scholarship? Hey, first of all, a blown knee is a blown knee, and it's over. And they haven't concentrated on studies all this time. Let's be real. It's okay if they are pretty good at a sport to focus on it, but also understand there are limitations. There are limitations. Because guess what? Only about 1% of athletes make it. So if you concentrate on that, if you think that's your ticket, parent, that's bad thinking. Because that means you aren't setting your priorities right. Because I always tell parents, first of all, you don't want kids, leave them where they are. Don't bring them into the world. If you don't want them, because once they're here, guess what? They're your responsibility. They're your responsibility. We have to understand that the things we once loved to do are now on the back burner. We talked about guardrails. What about God's guardrails? Think about the 10 Commandments. Many of us were brought up on the 10 Commandments. I was brought up in a Baptist church, so we didn't talk much about the New Testament. It was a lot about Old Testament. But thou shalt have no other gods. Thou shalt not make any graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord that God made. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. We've forgotten all about the Sabbath day. You think about all the activities that are happening on Sunday now. They fill up all the other days of the week, so now they load everything else up into Sunday. And they taking our kids out of church and pulling them to every other activity. I got a game on Sunday. Well, what? Just think about it. If all the parents once and said, you know what? Our kids can't go to games on Sunday because they're going to church. Guess what? They probably wouldn't have games on Sunday. But we don't do that because we follow the societal norms, not necessarily the Word of God. Societal norms have become what we follow. And let's not talk about thou shalt not kill. Oh. Sister wants to say that, that God is, that Hispanics are trying to eliminate the black man. I go, we're eliminating ourselves. You think about it, our young black men out there shooting in the homes, they're killing babies. Let's not get it twisted. We have got to make sure that we have our priorities set. But being the adult in the room, when kids' attitudes and behaviors change due to stress, parents need to step in to ensure they are healthy both physically and mentally. Some parents are beginning to insist on the following, Kids getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night. They must have downtime with family and friends. It's important to do those things. Must have time to take breaks and rest. They call it the PDF. Personal, a fun time. Personal time for the older. Some of the younger kids, maybe it's fun time. But the downtime for them to recharge their batteries. Everyone said, well, you're young. But you know what? They need time to recharge their batteries as well. And then there's family time. And family time has almost been done away with in many cases. But being an adult in the room, crucially, parents may need to slow down too. We need to slow down too. Multi-achievers told researchers that it was important to model healthier habits and relationships themselves. Don't overload your own schedule with work. Get enough sleep. And make sure you have regular downtime to spend with family, where taking breaks to check your email aren't allowed. Because kids follow our own examples, right? I was very bad at this. I had one of my teenage daughters tell me once, Dad, you love to work, don't you? Man, that one hit me. And I go, no, I don't love to work. So I made a pact. Back in the day when Domino's would deliver in 30 minutes or less. And so I said, okay, you call the pizza in on Friday night at 6 o'clock. I'll be home at 6:30 by the time the pizza's delivered. And then Saturday morning, we got to go to breakfast. And we always took family vacations together. It wasn't this breakup thing like that. No, we're going to take family vacation. We had a good time. And the best thing was when my youngest daughter took a college trip, and she came back. She said, "Did you enjoy it?" She said, "No, I told my dad was here. I would have had a great time." I go, "Whoa, was I proud?" Yeah, because we would schedule things to do as a family. Go sightseeing and do other things, and then you get a chance to talk and rebuild that relationship with your family. It's important to do that. You know, as Brother King said, you know, Satan is out here just trying to destroy the family. I mean, you look at the family unit now, they have 2 moms and 2 dads. And I mean, you don't, people today look at what is the family unit? What is a family unit? I can't see the dissonance between our words and our actions. It doesn't matter what we tell them. It's what we do. When we exhaust ourselves, we also must be constantly aware of guardrails. Guardrails have to be set in place. Guardrails have to be set in place. We'll talk about that a little bit more. You think about so many people working from home now. You find they're working from home, and that extends over. Because, you know, when you work from home, you know, you don't have off hours. You really don't have off hours when you're working from home. You have to set up your own guardrails. Because if you got children sitting here going, okay, I'm home from school now, my mom's on the phone, my dad's on the computer, no one's talking to me, no one's saying, how was your day? What did you do today? Tell me about that. You know, my wife and I, sometimes we pick up our granddaughter from school, and she get in the car and she started talking, and we sit there and we laugh and smile all the way home. We go, she just talks all the time about what she did and other things and what other people did, and we just love that. We just absolutely love that. And then when she doesn't talk, we go, what's wrong with her? But we want her to talk. And then we said, how do you feel about it? She be talking about stuff we don't even understand. And we said, so tell me about that. What was that? And just so that, you know, we can get that verbiage out of her. It's just important for her to know that we care about her and what her thoughts are. But setting priorities. And then, when they're not working, oh, I'm checking my email. You checking your email? Well, hey, I'm watching my program on my phone. Yeah. And the poor kids sitting there, and they say, but we spend time with her. We're there with her all the time. We don't know what happened. We don't know why she's on drugs, why she's out having sex as a teenager, why she's drinking. I'd rather hang out with her friends. Because you know what? You're spending no time with the kid. Simply because you're sitting right next to him, you're not present. You're not present. Being present is very, very important. Your child's developed environment matters. Children are individuals, but they are part of a whole system too. As well as close family members, a child's system all includes school, church, their own relationships, and the wider culture. Wider culture. I mean, social media has created another completely different culture. I mean, you know, they want to know what the Kardashians are doing, and Cardi B, and whatever, you know, Nas X. You know, they know about what's going on with these people than you do. And they can tell you exactly what's going on. But that becomes their culture. It makes sense to look at that system and to do what we can to make it the best possible environment for us and our children. It doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. Someone saying, well, I'm the perfect doesn't exist. If someone says you're perfect, they're pretending. Perfect does not exist. So let's not get in the head of perfect. But what you want to do is try. If you're there, you're trying and you engage, then your kids will appreciate that. People in a child's life comprise their child's world. Regardless of what you think inside your home, people comprise the child's world. I remember talking to Sister Beeman once, and we were talking about these shootings. And one mother who said that my son's protected because he is here at home, but I let his friend come over. His friend came over and brought a gun, and the kid got shot. So the people comprise that child's world. Just because she didn't let him go outside of the home, the people that came into the home still comprised his world and created a threat that she was not even aware of. A child's world should be one of love and richness. Love and richness. Love is self-explanatory. Richness sometimes think, well, I can afford this. I can't. That's not what it means. It means a quantity of things. It can be quantity of character, a quantity of love, quantity of showing that you matter, a quantity of sitting, talking, spending time, That's richness. Must not be a battleground where carers, relationships aren't functional. And kids worry about their own security, safety, and how they belong. So if you got people in the relationship, it may be single parents. But if they're battling constantly, the mom and the dad, whoever has the kids, if they're battling constantly, guess what? That's a battleground. It can be grandparents fighting with the parents. That's a battleground. So if kids see that it's a battleground, then it's not functional. And they worry about their own security, their safety, and how they belong. That stresses kids out. And they start looking for security elsewhere and safety elsewhere. They wonder why people join gangs. They join gangs because they felt like there was no wholesomeness in their household. So they had to go outside to get love. A teenager goes out and has sex because they feel like that's love because there's no one else is loving me. Those are things for us to consider. Children need to know that they matter. We must untangle self-worth from achievement. Self-worth from achievement. Kids don't bring home the right grades, then you're no good. You're worth nothing, just like your daddy. Just like your mother. That's not a good thing. The pressure to achieve is baked into our larger society. As a result, children are increasingly absorbing the message that they have no value outside of their accomplishments. That's not good. That they have no value outside of their accomplishments. We must make them understand they are very valuable. That they're loved and appreciated. Yeah, maybe they're not accomplishing what you want them to, but it's a great time to sit down and say, so tell me, what's going on here? Tell me about some of the things that are happening. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more too. So, research shows that what kids need from the parents in the room is not more pressure, but to feel like they matter, have self-worth, not contingent upon external achievements. Kids who receive consistent feedback that they matter, no matter what, are more likely to have the resilience, self-confidence, and psychological security to thrive. I mean, it's, kids, hormones are all over the place. I mean, they're so conflicted with all the stuff going on. Psychologically, they're a mess. So if we don't rein some of that in and ensure that they feel like they're on stable ground, it's very, very difficult for them to thrive. After studying self-esteem of high school students, legendary psychologist Morris Rosenberg stated, critical to their well-being was feeling valued. Those who felt they mattered to their parents enjoyed higher self-esteem and lower rates of depression than peers who felt they mattered less. When kids feel like they matter, they're secure in the knowledge that they have a strong, meaningful connection and that they are not going through this life alone. I mean, if all of a sudden they're not accomplishing what we want them to accomplish, and all of a sudden we're putting them down at home, the teachers are putting them down at school, their friends are putting them down, don't you feel like they feel like they're alone? They feel like no one loves me. No one loves me but me. No one is born knowing their inherent value. No one is born knowing their inherent value. You think about it, we're all born being selfish. We're born selfish. You think anytime we need something, we cry when we're born. So no one knows their inherent value when they're born. But we, just like wean them off the bottle, we have to wean them off being selfish. We form this perception over time based on how we are seen and treated by the people in our lives, most critically by our caregivers. So what we do and what we say matters. what we do and what we say matters. When children are chronically made to feel like they don't matter, when they're consistently made to feel they don't matter, when they are abused, ignored, or made to feel marginalized, as though they don't exist, they behave in ways that force others to take notice, often acting out in extreme ways. So people wonder why they get in trouble at school, or whenever they're not around us, or wonder why they're drinking and doing drugs. They're acting out. They're acting out. And lack of mattering is a strong predictor of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide. And suicides. Teen suicides are up over the last 10 years. And particularly up in the black community. Black community, LGBTQ, the alphabet community, the teen suicides are up. And some of that goes back to the stress we talked about earlier. They tend to overgeneralize and catastrophize their thoughts, convincing themselves that they don't matter now and will never matter in the future. And when that happens, they turn inward. They give up. They do drugs. They drink. They do things to escape, even harm themselves. They're looking for an out. They're looking for an out when they feel like they do not matter. So basic principles of good parenting. Set clear rules and boundaries. Some people don't like to do that. Some people don't like to do that. Some people don't like, it's my baby. I was running a strict household and I didn't like that. And okay, maybe your household was too strict, but that didn't mean you should have no, rules and boundaries. Correct? You should have no rules and boundaries. While it's important to nurture your child's development, it's equally important to establish rules and expectations for their behavior. A behavioral contract. I've known people who, when their kids began to drive, they wrote a contract, had them sign it. First of all, you want these keys? First of all, there's no drinking. There's no drugs. You can only have one other person in the car. There's no speeding. There's no tickets. There's no, And so break any of these, those keys are mine. You may never see them again. Behavioral contracts are great. Here are expectations. I expect you to go to school. No skipping school. No skipping school. My daughter will get upset if I tell a story about her skipping school once, but I'll tell her anyway. My daughter once decided some friends they'll skip school. They were 13, 14. I said, I had to ask my wife, so her memory's better than mine. But I came home that night, and she had a phone, and goofy phone. Was it a goofy phone? It was a goofy. What it was, but anyway, I remember grabbing the phone out of the wall, and Olivia said the phone never worked again. I didn't spare the rod that night either. So, and she told people I was afraid of my dad till I was 23 years old. And it wasn't about being afraid. There were consequences to her behavior. Consequences to her behavior. And so, of course, she was grounded for quite a bit of time, too. Maybe for the next year or two. But be loving, but firm and consistent. Teens are master negotiators and manipulators. They are. They're adept at spotting any sign of parental weakness. Hey, Dad, I was telling Mom, and but I said, what did Mom say? Look at each other. Oh, he gonna say whatever she said. I said, yeah. What did Mom say? I can put us against each other. Now, my wife and I may go into a separate room and have a conversation and say, honey, what do you think? And my wife said, well, I was upset. And then she said, well, I'm going to change my mind. I said, well, I'm not going to tell him. You go tell him. Because I don't want to think that I changed your mind. So I'll let her go tell him. So they feel like, and they would always say, well, he's going to say whatever she said. She's going to say whatever he said. That was fine with me. Because that meant they couldn't manipulate us. Teens push boundaries to see how parents will respond. So it's important to have consequences for breaking those rules and follow through on those consequences. Threats don't work. You can threaten all you want to and say, well, this time, and then the kids go, see. The next time, well, see. The kids, they know what they're doing. So it's important to follow through on those consequences. You may not even like the consequences, and you probably don't. But it's important to just follow through on those consequences. You know, Proverbs 13:24. You know, whoever spares a rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. Now, I said sparing the rod. This day and age, some people, well, you know, well, I'm against all this sparing the rod thing. I said, well, you have a lot of control. You know, it's your finances that they're living under. So they don't want to do what you say. They eat what you tell them to eat. They wear what you tell them to wear. They go where you tell them to go. They go with you. Well, why can I? Well, hey, no, you don't listen to what I have to say? Fine. This is your discipline. And trust me, I'm doing it because I love you. And my daughters would do things, and they'd be so mad. They go to the room and everything, and so later on, I give them a little while to get real mad. And I go and say, you don't like me very much today, do you? And they go, no. I said, you still love me though, right? I give them a hug. They go, Dad, leave me alone. Which means you've broken the barrier. But let them know, I still love you. But guess what? You're not going to get away with this stuff. You sit there and you tell them, you know, I love you. I love you more than life itself. Do anything for you. And this is what I'm doing for you. You will not get away with this. You don't understand now, but you will later on. And my daughters now tell their cousins, everybody else, hey, they should have been brought up by Rylas Carter. I tell you, you wouldn't have got away with this stuff. No. Because you have to do that. My mother would tell my siblings, y'all should let Rylas raise all your kids. I didn't want to do that, by the way. Be a good role model and infuse moral values. The best way to encourage positive teen behavior is to walk the talk yourself. Instill moral and spiritual values at home, or they will adapt to the values of whatever environment they experience most, whether from friends, other relatives, or social media. You got relatives you don't want your kids to be around. And people say, well, it's okay, that's her uncle. Let me tell you, more kids are abused by relatives, people they know. So, you need to make sure you understand who your kids are around. When they go to Jamie's house, do you know Jamie's parents? Well, her mom's divorced and her dad, I think you got a new boyfriend. Hey, whoo. Red flag, red flag, red flag. And if my kids come to my house, and my wife said, all these kids over here. I said, yeah. I'd be smiling. I said, why? I know exactly where they are. They downstairs, they know my pizza and everything else, running my power bill. I'm just very thrilled. We have to understand that we need to give of ourselves to make that happen. 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. And that could be you. You could be the bad company. Or your friends. Or your friends. I mean, you're a man and you got guys want to come in your house and watch a ball game and all they want is cuss and drink. You tell the kids, go in the other room. Well, they hear everything that's going on. They know what's going on. Kids are smarter than you think. In Galatians 5:22, but the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. You think about it. Joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. We talk about that foundation that we should be teaching our kids, training them up how to be kind, genuine, gentle, patient, have joy. Have joy. Bad things happen with us, and they look at you and say, well, why are you seem to be happy. I'm not happy, but I got joy because I know God brought me through this. I know it's difficult, but you'll understand. But then they start to understand. They have those conversations. Give the human touch. And that didn't mean the hand. You know, some people say, I'm giving the human touch, all right. But spend time with kids and talk about subjects they want to talk about. Their interests. Be patient. Don't get stuck on trivial issues. You know, we can get caught up on trivial stuff. I don't like the shoes you wear. I don't like the color palette you get. I don't like this. And it's like, okay, that's trivial stuff, right? They'll learn that as they grow older in some cases. Be patient. Don't get stuck on trivial issues, and don't stifle them. Don't stifle. I mean, don't be the helicopter parent. You're hovering over them all the time. But don't let them become non-participants in front of a screen either. You know? So don't stifle them. Give them a little space. Again, we talked about that downtime. But don't let them become non-participants. Patience is the foundation of all parenting principles. We need to accommodate their desires while leading them on a desired path. And that's important, leading them on a desired path. Yes, we're the adults, but it's always good to get their thoughts and input to ensure less resistance. So you go, sometimes ask them, what do you think? I mean, you're going with what they think. What do you think? How do you think? I remember when my oldest daughter would come to us sometimes because, you know, we're disciplining the younger daughter or whatever. She goes, Mom, Dad, yeah, can I talk to you? Well, on behalf of Nisha, I think that, you know, so really? Yeah, that's what you think, huh? Okay. So sometimes she and I talk about it and said, okay. And we'd go with it. And they think, oh, we got to win. We got to win. But sometimes they may be right because we say, hey, your curfew is 11 o'clock. Well, you know, everybody's staying out to midnight. Do you think you can stay to midnight? We said, okay, how old are you now? Okay, look at the watch. You look at the calendar, I'm looking at my watch. How old are you now? But you say, okay, that's fine. We can adjust the curfew. Let's talk about that a little bit. But you know what? But if you don't abide by that curfew, guess what? You will never have another curfew because you'll never go out again. That's not an idle threat. Teach responsibility. Good daily, weekly chores. Give daily and weekly chores and acknowledge or reward good behavior. They need to know that choices they make, good or bad, have consequences. Balance positivity with realism and do not encourage negativity. You know, when kids come home and say that, you know, my teacher doesn't like me, and, you know, your parent will run up to school, my kid say, you know what? Say, tell me why you think the teacher doesn't like you. And sometimes you talk, well, you know, because, you know, I didn't turn in my homework. Well, that's not the teacher, that's you. Don't let them don't encourage negativity. Because when you encourage negativity, and even when we sit around and talk about things that we know are bad, you have to be careful. Well, I don't want you going to Jamie's house because I know that her parents do this, do that. You know, you're encouraging it. You said, no, it's just not a good environment for you. I mean, you don't have to tell them all the facts, but give them a little layout and say, hey, here are our values. Okay, let's talk about that. Jamie's okay to come over here anytime you want to. So it's okay for Jamie to be your friend. She can come over here anytime she wants to. So it's, oh, okay, yeah, it's great. There was I think Sister Wade sent this out. Some of you may have seen it. I think it was on Facebook or something about the where her parents the girl had a sleepover, and the parents and they found out that the father drugged the girls. Can you see that? You see that? I think it was on Facebook or something, right? And the parent drugged the girls, and one of the girls called the parents and said, hey, something's going on here. And the parents will say, okay, that's but you know, you got to know who the parents are. You got to know what's going on. So, I mean, that's not negativity. I mean, but you want kids to have a sleepover at somebody's house, you got to know what's going on. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is clicking too fast. whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about, meditate on such things, you know. There's so much negativity out there right now, from in the political arena and news, everything you see is negative. So we have to be careful that we create an environment for our teens, any of our kids really, even young adults, an environment. I mean, that it is one of positivity. The positivity. I told some of you, my siblings and I, we text each other probably every day. So many times they'll literally say, "Don't even put me on the thread anymore," but all the time. But you know, usually I follow up with a scripture. You know, like, you know, John 16:33. You know, God said, you know, that, you know, guess what? You know, I overcame the world. You know, so this too shall pass, people. We got to understand something. So try to be positive as much as we possibly can. Stay involved. One of the best ways to prevent bad behavior is to know what your kids are up to. That does not mean spying on them, but you just need to be involved and interested, and an interested parent. Know their friends and their activities in school and the community. You know, and that can extend. That's the extended family. I know that with my daughters, you know, with our grandkids, I mean, if they can't be at school for something, they said, "Hey, Mom, Dad, can you be there?" We go, "Yeah." "Can you go on the field trip?" "Yeah, it's great. Reason we retired, so we can do those kind of things." You know, so and when the grandkids see, they brighten up because they know somebody loves them, somebody's there. There's support. There's support. So it's important to be involved, stay involved. And they know that their parents sent us. So being involved also means watching for any warning signs that your teen is in trouble. When we are involved, we see changes in their behavior and are able to address issues before they become stumbling blocks. You know, we should know our kids well enough. You know, if we don't have any time with them, it's difficult to know them. We need to know them so that we understand when there's a change in that behavior. Nurture innate trust. By nature, children have the tendency of trusting, but as they grow older, somewhere that trust is shaken. You know, things don't always go their way, right? Whether it's at school, they don't make the team, you know. So sometimes trust is shaken a little bit. But they, you know, check if they trust themselves and in the goodness of people. Children's talents and communication skills shrink if trust is shaken. The communication skills and talents shrink. And if the communication skills shrink, they're not talking to you as much. They're not listening to you as much. So it's important that we figure out what's going on with their trust. Communicate. And communicate doesn't mean talking. It means also listening. Communicate also means listening. You know? So sometimes kids, you say, "Well, let me tell you." He said, "Well, you tell me." So tell me what's going on. What do you think? You know, get them to tell you things. This is a great way to build trust and understanding for both of you. Be open and honest, but not accusatory. Not accusatory. "Well, you were there. You did this. What did you do?" Talk about drugs, alcohol, sex, finances. You know, we sometimes talk about the other things, but we forget to talk about finances. And don't overreact. Make sure they know you're an off-ramp. We're an off-ramp when they feel they may be heading for trouble. Now, I use my daughters as an example because I don't want to use anyone else's. Use my daughters as an example. I remember my daughters were teenagers, and I said, "If you're ever somewhere you think you should not be, call me and I will come get you." And they were somewhere one night, they come, "Dad, we don't think we should be here." Now, they had some friends with them, so when I left, they had a carload. And the other friends couldn't believe it. You can call your parents and tell them that? Yeah. I drove home, pulled in the garage, they got out, went cooked pizza and everything, and I went to bed. Their friends couldn't figure out, "Your dad's not yelling and screaming at you." They said, "No." Because I was the off-ramp. The moment I go and yelling and screaming, next time they will never call me. Yes. Then something happens, a shooting, a drug overdose, something happens, the police, They don't call me now, they're in the middle of it. Be the off-ramp. I was teaching some teenagers back in Florida, and we were talking about this. And they said, my parents told me if I went to jail not to call them, I just have to sit there. And I gave them my card and said, call me. Kids got to have an off-ramp. They have to have somebody to call, right? So you should be that person. You should be that person. Not being accusatory. Yeah, are you upset that they got into that situation? Absolutely. But guess what? Call me first. I want to be there. That's the person they should be calling. If your teen does have bad behavior, try to understand what is driving it before you come down hard on them. In fact, the teen years can bring some of the toughest discipline challenges parents have to face. Sulking, arguing, lying, and rebelling are just a few of the ways teens misbehave. As teens become more independent, they still lack the emotional maturity they need to make informed, thoughtful decisions. The parts of the brain that control decision-making and impulse control haven't fully developed. We need to understand that. What were you thinking? Well, they weren't. Because they're not mature enough to think that way. But that was my friend. But I thought, well, you know. And I had a leader once. She would always, when I made mistakes, she goes, so Riles, tell me, so what would you do differently? That's a good way to address it. So what would you do differently? Why do you think this happened? And they start answering the questions for you. He said, so next time I want to, okay, great. Yeah, and this is one of those friends I think, Dad, I might have to lose her number. Okay, good. Dad, go to bed happy. I'm happy with that, right? You can't just put them in a timeout. So effective parenting of teens requires smarter, stronger discipline strategy. The goal of discipline is to provide a mix of instruction, encouragement, and correction to teach them to live according to appropriate morals and values. Some people, I can't wait to punish them. Well, think of it differently. Teach them to live according to appropriate values through instruction, encouragement, and correction. When we talk about that spiritual foundation, great time to use it. Great time to use that spiritual foundation. Create an open environment where your kids can talk to you about issues, even the touchy ones. If discipline is warranted, ensure that parents are on the same page. Can't wonder, well, I don't know what dad did that to you. I don't know what mom did that. Make sure they're on the same page. And while you're being firm, don't forget to be fair and understanding. A little empathy goes a long way. Tell them, say, hey, look, I understand. I understand what you were thinking at the time, but that didn't work. So you know what the consequences are. And they go, yeah, I signed the contract. I know what the discipline is. Okay. Parents and children have the unique strengths and weaknesses. Therefore, the parent-child relationship has no standard rules. The same rules may lead to different results, so being moldable in how you address issues is a key. Be sensitive and practice what you preach. Again, we talk about threats don't work. Threats don't work. You can threaten them all you want to, and then the moment you don't follow through, guess what? Okay, I can try that again. There's no consequences. Dad didn't really mean it. And I like this right here. My promise to my children. For as long as I live, I'll always be your parent first, your friend second. As they say, you want a friend, buy a dog. I'll be your friend second. I will stalk you, flip out on you, lecture you, drive you insane, be your worst nightmare, and hunt you down like a bloodhound when I have to because I love you. You find that they're going somewhere you don't know where they are. There are people on TV say, my child is missing. Where? I don't know. Where did they go with? I don't know. When did they leave? I have no idea. I go, how could that be? How could that be? My kids, okay, first of all, I want his license plate number, his phone number, who his parents are, You're not going to be leaving here with anyone I don't know. And they don't stop in the driveway and blow. They come in. They have to meet your parents. Nowadays, it's like they just hook up on social media and boom, boom, boom. I'm gone. Okay, bye. They don't know where they went, what time they're coming back, nothing. You know? Hunt you down like a bloodhound when I have to because I love you. When you understand that, I know you have become a responsible adult. You will never find anyone else in your life who loves, prays, cares, and worries about you more than I do. If you don't mutter under your breath, I hate you, at least once in your life, I'm not doing my job properly. So it's something for us to think about. The best inheritance parents can give to their children is time. People say, I'm working all these out. I'm working because I want to leave my kids something. Yeah? Guess what? Yeah, the kid dies of a drug overdose. What did you leave them? Because you haven't spent enough time to teach them. They die in a drive-by shooting because they're hanging out with the wrong crowd. Because you didn't find enough time to spend with them. If you have never been hated by your child, you've never been a parent. Actress Betty Davis said that. So 2 Timothy 3:16. All scripture is God-breathed, and it's useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. So let's not forget that. We use it for adults, but we forget to use it with our children. We forget to use it with our children. We want to wait till they get to be adults to try to use it with them. It's too late in some cases. Colossians 3:21. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. Hebrews 12:7-8. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. But when children are not disciplined by their father, if you're not disciplined and everyone undergoes discipline, then you're not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. And a good parent will sometimes question if they are a good parent and the choices they have made for the child. A bad parent simply doesn't care enough about the child to question themselves. So when you're questioning yourself about the choices you're making, that means you're being a good parent. Let's not beat ourselves up. Let's not beat ourselves up because we've done that before. We say, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have punished them. Maybe I shouldn't have. You know what? You're being a good parent. The bad parent's like, yeah, go, do, yeah, go, yeah, go, yeah, go. And then they wonder what happened. You see the parents on TV when son or daughter, somebody's being arrested, and even, you hate to put it to it, but even sometimes shot by cops because, they weren't following instructions. The parents are yelling and screaming and go, but where were you 20 years ago? What were you teaching them? What were the values then? So I thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation. Yep, it is. I know we're running a little behind, so I was going through that pretty fast today. But thank you anyways for your time, and turn it back over to Perry.
Thank you to Brother Ralph Carter for that wonderful message of how to be a good parent. We are going to take a 5-minute bathroom break, and then we will return here for our panel session. 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Welcome back, everybody. We had such a wonderful lesson presented to us by Brother Riley Carter, and I'm gonna tell you, he gave me parenting anxiety. I'm just entering into the preteen stages. I did not know all this was to come. I don't know whether I forgot my teenage years, but I was like that professional teenager. That was me. But we have a wonderful panel here of parents who have adult children, parents who are currently teenage parents. We have some medical professionals from UAB, and we also have a grandparent who has entered back into parenthood. So we have just a broad range of parents, and we have a form that we're going to put together, and we have questions. And let me give this disclaimer. A lot of our questions came from our teenagers here at the church. And I pinky promised that I would not disclose who gave some of these questions. So you can drag me down the street. I will not give out those names. But they trusted Perry and I enough to submit questions that they would just like, that came from them, that they would like parents to know that they're thinking about. So as our panel goes through these questions, I just hope that you open your heart. Also, I got some of these questions from the babies at my school. So some did not come from Woodland Park, but majority of them did. So just open your heart and listen to some of the things that the kids are dealing with. And we just want you to be mindful of the time. So panel, we have 2 mics. If you will pass them, or if you want to speak, if you will raise your hand so that they'll know to pass you the microphone, please.
Thank you. All right, our first question. Do you think parenting is as hard now than 40 years ago?
Anyone out in the panel would like to take the question?
I'll take that question. Parenting, it is definitely hard because it's different. It's very different because they face so much now. Like he said, they're looking for approval. They want to please their parents, but they also, friends are so, I think they put friends, especially when they get in those tweens, we're talking about teens, but let's talk about our 10 to 12-year-olds in that tween stage where they're not so much kiddie, they haven't reached teenage, and they're just kind of trying to find themselves because so much is going on. And they're exposed to so much, so it's very different coming from a grandparent raising their children. It's very different. It's nothing like when I raised my daughter.
Would someone else like to take? We have 2 mics. I want you guys to speak.
Hey, so I totally agree. Well, 40 years ago I would have been 6, but yes, with social media, a person made a statement to me, and I have a teenager now. You're saying like, oh my,
Right.
totally changed. But social media, kids, even though they love you, they want to respect you, but the other forefront is they are more wanting acceptance from their friends than their parents. And so there is a struggle with that. But one of the things that was discussed earlier is listening, being a support person, not being as defensive, but also showing that you care. So, yeah.
What role should grandparents play in helping to rear their grandchildren?
So, I grew up with my grandparent in my house. I grew up with a single mom, and my grandmother was in the house. And my grandma played a big part of our life. She helped out my mom a lot. So the respect was the same. But now that my child is grown now, but I had a child when I was, and my mom, well, when she was a teenager, my mom was there. It was kind of hard because my mom them set rules like they, he was saying earlier, you didn't ask why, you didn't ask this, you didn't ask that. You stayed in a child's place. But raising a child in the 2000s, I mean, you listen to them. I had to change up the way that I grew up. You know, I had to be more open and listen because I wanted her to be able to come to me instead of going to her peers. And I had to kind of tell my mom that I had to say, okay, you keep saying, well, when my kids were little, when I was raising my kids, I was one of your kids. And I understand where you're coming from, but you know, things are different. And I had to explain it to her. And I said, talk to her, be open to her, let her talk to you, and you'll understand why parenting changed a little bit. And as the years went on, she did. She used to call my daughter directly and talk to her. My daughter opened up to her more, and she understood that times are different now, and that, you know, parenting do change a little bit, and you have to be that grandparent where she could come to you when she don't feel comfortable coming to me with stuff, and she's still getting good parental advice. So that's kind of like my take on and my experience with my daughter and grandparenting.
Safe space.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brother Carter.
You know, being a grandparent is a great thing. You know, people say, well, you know, you can always send them back home. But that's, you know, what you want to do is be supportive. As a grandparent, you want to know the values that your children have set, the guidelines they have set for their kids, so that you're supporting those particular guidelines. Sometimes they will open more up to grandparents than they will to their own parents. So you don't want to cut that off by saying, you know, well, in my day, and those kind of things. So you want them to open and talk to you. So you can even go back to your children and say, hey, look, here's what your child said, and here's some things you all may need to discuss. But because these young people these days, and you're talking about 10, 12, whatever, they know a lot of stuff. They on social media and everything, and they ask you questions that, you know, that you said, where did you get that from? And even sometimes difficult questions. So it's important that we show that support for them and know, as the lady mentioned down there, that they know that they can come to you even if they can't go to their parents, and that you're confident, even though we'll share with the parents, but you're confident that they are not at risk by coming to you.
Thank you.
How can I talk to my child about relationships? And what are a few key things to tell them? Sister Mary, you want to take that question?
Talking to kids about relationships depends on two. I have two sons and there's a 10-year gap. So when I talk to, especially Miles now, I don't use Miles now since Jude's an adult, but I go into the back and I ask them about friends and whatever, and kind of what's going on. Try to get a sense and a feel for what type of relationship it is, and how close that person is to him, and how much influence that person has on him. And so I try to gauge it from there, and then I give them examples and tell them things to look for. While I am also trying to determine if this person, not so much as trying to pick his friends, but to try to see if this person is going to be a positive person in his life, And then I try to show things or emphasize things if I see that there's something that a concern that needs to be addressed. So again, let them be open, let them share those relationships and try to kind of decipher what type of relationship it is. Like I said, how much influence it has on him, and what's his thoughts about the relationship. But then I also too, like I said, will give my input and so as well as his father on those relationships.
Anyone else? Someone with adult children? Sister Stevenson. I was trying to give her a hand.
So what I try to do is listen to, I ask questions and try to direct them to what I think might be a conclusion. I try to ask questions that will get them to think about the person. And they confide in me, and I will say, well, what do you think about what happened regarding this? I always try to let them think it through themselves. I don't like to preach or tell them this is the way to go. I think you let them come to the conclusion by asking them questions that point them into the direction that they've been taught or that they know they should go.
Thank you.
How do I teach my child or children about having boundaries and gaining respect from others for their boundaries?
I think teaching your child about boundaries is basically teaching them about their self-worth. If they know, if you set boundaries anyway in your home, they know right from wrong. So if they know their self-worth, they'll know things not to go, they know the boundaries not to go over. I had a teenage daughter, and she's an adult now, but I had to teach her, like, she had a lot of friends and they was doing a lot of stuff that she wasn't doing. And sometimes she felt some kind of way about it. She was like, I feel like we don't have nothing in common. And I said, well, you have boundaries for yourself. It's certain stuff that you're not going to do that they're doing. You don't have to do it. And you let them know, hey, that's what you choose to do, but I'm not going to do it. And you set boundaries with them so they won't always try to peer pressure you into doing stuff. A lot of the girls were doing a lot of stuff that my daughter wasn't into, and she used to come to me about it. And she was like, dude, I look some kind of way about not doing this. I said, no. I mean, you don't have to do what other people are doing, and you need to let them know that that's not what you choose to do. If they want to be your friend, they're going to respect that because you're respecting yourself. So it's just kind of like my take on it. That was my experience. I went through a lot with a teenage daughter and her friends because my daughter was the only child. So we went through her wanting friends because she was the only child in the house. So she thought that her friends was important to her to have friends because she was growing up by herself. But
one of the things, I used to always taught my son, when it came to boundaries, he always thought my wife and I was too strict on my father's stuff, so he always pushed me. So even growing up, I was a child that respected my parents. And when they told me something, I believed it. The poem that Brother Carter shared about parents. And one of the lines he said was that nobody's going to love for you or care for you more than I. And I tell folks, I was foolish enough to believe that as a child. So once we had a reunion, a family reunion, and my son attended the family reunion. Now, I grew up with a family of 12 brothers and sisters, and then had a bunch of nieces and nephews that I was pretty much around their age. And when he went to the reunion, they told him, they was telling him about how strict I was, and how I used to try to make them stay within the boundaries that my parents set for them, which was their grandparents. And they would tell him, I'm surprised you even still alive because of that. And he got a chance to see what I tried to tell him. And my friends would tell him, you know, when they did certain things, not that I was some perfect child, but when they did certain things, I knew there was a line I was not going to cross. And when a couple of my friends would tell him about that, and he got a chance to see it differently. But the thing is, I try to tell him about there are boundaries you have to do with everybody in a relationship. Just lines you just don't cross in life that it's going to be a consequence for. And so, you know, all the thing we can do is teach our children and be an example for them. And you just hope and pray that they follow those guys. You can't live your life for them. And so you have to set those boundaries, and all of that will be an example for them. And later on in life, hopefully before it's too late, they would appreciate those things from you. But that was just one of the things. But it took my nieces and nephews to tell me, because my father named me, he always called me boss, because I would make those other children do right. And that was my nickname, boss. Mama said, be here. And one of my nieces told her, I locked her out of the house. She had to sleep on the porch, because I told her to be home at 10. And she did, and she told my son that. And it was true. I could come late again. So, but you have to do that.
And just so y'all know, Brother Davis is from Mississippi. So sleeping on that porch ain't that nice out there. We from the same area. I'm just here to tell you, it ain't that nice.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what Brother Davis had mentioned. I agree with that. Just a few thoughts come to mind. God has delegated, given me authority as a husband. Read a couple of verses here. Ephesians 5:23. But the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the wife. So that's he delegated that authority to me in the home. Even in Ephesians chapter 6, children obey your parents in the Lord, it is right. So God has delegated that authority to the parents in the home. Also, in Romans chapter 13, let every soul be subject unto the high powers. There is no power but of God, the power that be ordained of God. So the point is, in saying all of that, I've always tried to teach my boys, you just respect, brother. Davis has already mentioned his word respect. If you just respect God-given authority that he has ordained to your parents and to the civic, those that are in charge, those that oversee, if you just do that, you will be okay. And so I come from that. There were those 3 points there. And a lot of times, you know, that they have to find out the hard way. But I think if you can go from that standpoint, it might help you.
Thank you, sir. For our next question is, how do I balance having a social life and a Christian life? Sister Clark, you want to take that question?
You know, when you were saying that, I was like, is he meaning for the parent or for the youth? But before the youth. Repeat that question for me one more time.
How do you balance having a social life and a Christian life?
Okay. I think it's important for us as parents to ensure that we do have our children at church, not just at 10 o'clock service, but at every, like we're about to kick off Bible Bowl, so they learn those things that they need to know in terms of how to socially interact with other youth. Same thing with having them at Bible class, Sunday school. It just gives them other opportunities to interact with other teachers here at church to make sure that they understand what's socially acceptable. Like all the speakers this morning have informed us about social media and all the things that take place on social media. So if there's no Christian background for the youth, that's all that they see, and they think all of these things, like I think Brother Riley said this, Cardi B. They think everything Cardi B, that's right. At my school, they talk about Lotto, a rapper. I don't even know what big Lotto, Big Energy, whatever her song is. Megan Thee Stallion. Kids see this as in their face every single day. So especially, and of course you all know what these rap songs are telling them to do and what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So we have to have that Christian background at church and even have those conversations with your children at home, so they have an understanding of this is acceptable when you get married, this is acceptable for even not just a physical relationship, but how you allow other people to treat you, even if it's not one that's romantic. How do you allow other people to treat you, which goes back to the boundaries question. But definitely making sure that you have your children involved in a Christian manner.
Anybody else?
Just to piggyback off of what Sister Clark said, another thing that we too need to make sure that our children are aware of, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that that's boring. We need to teach our children to enjoy being a Christian, and that they stand in the forefront of others and show them that we as Christians have fun as well. So when we have activities that are involving our children that are outside, like she said, church and just, Bible class, when we have get-togethers or social ice cream socials, or even if they just want to meet on their own, or bowling activities, that's fun for us, that we still, as a Christian, when we're representing God, which is the first thing, that we still have fun being a Christian. So I think that's just part of it, and making sure that part of it, like she said, in that social aspect, as long as it's centered around things that are pleased and acceptable in God, that those things can be fun as well.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, all of the children really came up with these questions. So our next question starts off a little bit more serious, and I'm going to give Brother Carter to start off. Why are you so afraid to have to talk with me? So I'm going to get a father to answer first, and then a mother.
Is a question, why are you so afraid to have the talk with me?
Yes, sir.
The talk? The talk.
The talk.
The, capital T, capital H, capital E. I think it's, we allow society to dictate too many times what we really should be doing as parents. And as Brother Looney and everyone alluded to, we need to stay in biblical principles about raising our children, about training them up. And when we do those things, we're not afraid to talk to them. We have that open and honest conversation, and start doing it at an early age. What happens is you don't talk to your child till they're 13, and then all of a sudden it's time to have the talk, and you're afraid to talk to them because you haven't talked to them in 13 years. So it's important to make sure that we are having conversations all along the way. And I mentioned in my presentation that I would see things at work. I would see things like a guy would come to work at 18 and 19 years old and say, hey, Mr. Carter, I'm a father. I said, no, you got a baby. I said, you're not a father until you're raising one. So I said, you got a baby. I said, anyone can make a baby, you know, but it takes a lot to be a father. And I would go home and ask my daughters about things like, you know, a guy came and told me this. What do you think? And it opens a lot of dialogue. Things are happening on social media, everywhere else. And so we connected. We're staying involved with our kids. We'll see those things happening, and that will open up dialogue. I mean, you know, what's his name? The guy who did drumline, the guy had 9, 10 kids by 6, 7 different ones. Nick Cannon has all these babies and stuff. You know, you ask him, what do you, young lady, what do you think about that? And they go, whoa, you know. So, you know, to people out there having sex with people just because they got money. And I mean, different things. I remember my daughter going off to college, and she came home and said, your dad, these guys think you're going to get in the car with them simply because they got a nice car. And I go, whoa, she's listening. Okay, all right, good. Because, you know, you have to teach them things, because when they get out there in the world, they're going to learn it from somebody. If you're not having the talk, they're going to get the talk from someone else. When a few years ago, different girls in high schools were having babies because, well, she got a baby, I want a baby. Because all of a sudden they thought it was a little play thing, but it's not play. When you got a baby, you got a baby.
We'll bring it back to you. We'll bring it back to you, brother.
All right, so Deidre and I are actually going to tag team on this, just kind of give you a snippet overview of what we do. We work at UAB Family Clinic, where we provide HIV medical care for women, infant, children, and youth. We also provide education and testing throughout the community. I remember when I first started, there was a 13-year-old newly diagnosed with HIV. Kind of going back to that slideshow of when do you talk to kids, you know, after 13, you know, that's over. And now having a teenager myself, especially with working in this field and doing the talk early, because wanting to make sure she felt safe, that she could talk to her dad and myself, in addition to equipping her if she had questions versus asking friends questions. One of the main things that we do out when we work with youth, we're dispelling myths about what they learned from their friends or what they heard from their classmates or other people. There's so much that's out there, but knowing that there is a safe place, there are consequences, whether they're good, whether they're bad, choices that are made. You have to make sure they feel safe. I always start off by, don't judge me. And so this is a judge-free zone. You know, we want you to feel comfortable. We want you to know that we support you, we care for you, and that we got your back. Hold on.
Also, we do like a lot of colleges. We go into the community, so we speak to all ages. And when we go to the colleges, they bombard us with questions that they're scared to ask their doctor, they're scared to ask their parents, and they just really don't know. And by the time they get to college, they're doing all these different things, and they still don't know a lot about themselves, their bodies. Even when we speak to just people our ages, we're teaching them stuff that they didn't know. So having the talk is important, but we all need to be comfortable doing it, because like she said, we work with in the HIV clinic, and the diagnoses are getting younger and younger, and we're going to have to be open. When we go and have the talk with these kids, we're giving them the medical part of it, but we're open, like we're putting it out there because they're going to have to hear it. So us as parents, if we can learn, we're all, even when I start working with them, I have learned stuff that I didn't know. And I'm 46 years old, and I was like, oh wow. We're always, you're steadily learning every day. And just go to the CDC, look up stuff, get them statistics. I mean, it's scary, but it'll let them be more open to you, because y'all, HIV is real and all these other STDs, and we get newly diagnosed teenagers all the time, monthly. And so the talk has to be real, and it only takes one time to get something. So if you're open with your kids, and like I said, if it's something that you don't know, go to WebMD, talk to your doctor, ask them the best way to talk to your kids, and give them, like I said, give them statistics about stuff so they'll know what they need to do and can come to you and be comfortable, because you don't want them learning from their peers. Some of the stuff my daughter has told me, girls has told them, I know. Like, you don't want them learning from their peers at all, so you don't want them to come to you. And like he said, when they come back to you and they said something to you, you feel good. You be like, well, hey, they are really listening to me. And it just opened up the talk for other stuff and making them comfortable coming to you about anything. They need to go to the doctor, anything. They won't go to their peers saying, hey, what I need to do. They'll come to you about it. But yeah, we see it on a daily. And like I said, even some adults we go and talk to have questions and be shocked about the things that they didn't know. And I'm still learning stuff, as we go out and we research and we get, new information and stuff. We learn on a daily as well. So it's always time to teach, and I'll be open with that talk, because it's on the social media. It's kind of like the way of the world now. So.
Yeah, and just kind of thinking back, growing up, the talk was, if you do it, I'll kill you. And I was like, I don't want to die. So, that was the fear. And, I didn't have social media, back in the day. But kids, when my daughter, when she was younger, one of her friends had a birthday party and got the newest iPhone. Like, each year at 7 on up, she got a new phone. Think about what these kids are looking at, what these kids are Snapchat back and forth, TikTok videos. Even we are not with them 24 hours a day. So being able to educate yourselves about what is out there, knowing what websites to get, like Deidre said, accurate information, but making them feel safe. Because having the talk is not promoting it, but it's raising awareness about what is out there. There's some stuff that you can get rid of, and there's some stuff you have for life. So,
Thank you.
Brother Lonnie?
Ms. Alexander.
Yeah, I got a thought. It comes from 1 Corinthians 6 chapter, verse number 19. He said, what? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own. For you were bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which is God. So I kind of take the approach that if you can instill in your children that, you are precious, you was born in the image of God. Your body doesn't belong to you. Your body was created to glorify God. And you come from that perspective, I think it could be accepted, that can be accepted easier from parents, rather than, I'll just leave it at that, okay? That here.
We have one more question, and then we'll be done. Why do you treat a B, why do you treat a B grade like it's the end of the world? I'll never tell.
Okay, that goes goes back to what Brother Carter was teaching. We have to let our children know, embrace where they are, and that they're doing their best. If they're telling you that they're doing their best, then you celebrate them on every level. Because a B for one child, you can do better, but do you know how you make that child feel when they know they've done their best? So you celebrate them, whatever their grade is, and then you ask how you can probably help them along, talking about it, and not just getting on their case about it, And, you got a B, you made all A's last time. You can do better. Why not ask them what happened? How did you get this grade? And don't criticize them or make them feel less than because they have a B. If your child brings a B and you see another child brings in a C, even if they're siblings, the worst thing you can do is compare your children, or say, well, Johnny got an A, you got this C. You can't do that, because then you're not on, you think it's a competition, but then you could be causing separation or sibling rivalry between your children. So you let them know if they've done their best, you're proud of them, and then they may strive to do better.
We talked about earlier about separating self-worth and achievements. It's on, brother. Self-worth and achievement. And, when you do that, sometimes people are like, well, I have no self-worth unless I bring home all A's. But I think, Sister Allison was correct. When someone brings home a B and you think they can do better, you said, so you got a B, so that's good. So what do you think? You think you can do better, or is this the best you could do? And sometimes they go, well, I got a B and I didn't study, I could have done, well, it's okay, well, next time let's try a little harder. I mean, you do it in a way so it's not, as I say, accusatory, as though, well, you're failing. But it's a challenge out there right now, because everybody's looking at, well, you're not going to get into a good school if you don't bring home all A's and this kind of stuff. I read someone said, you know what, they're all good schools. So someone said, well, I want to get into, Yale. Well, maybe not Yale, but Alabama A&M and Alabama State. Don't separate the two. Make sure you get both of them in there. Good schools. I have 3 sisters that graduated from Alabama A&M, so they're doing pretty good. But so it's important that we continue to press that we are proud of them wherever they are, and as long as they're doing their best. As long as they're doing their best, it's important.
Sister Clark.
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to add on is definitely make sure that you ask your child, is there a reason, that this grade has dropped, or do you need any assistance? Do you need any tutoring? But what came to my mind when you all read that question, I thought about a sermon Brother Pitts preached many, many years ago, and it just always sticks into my head that the C student, the student that made the C's, may be the one that comes back to take care of you, to take care of us. It may not be the A student. They might be off doing the most, as the students say, and they don't have time for you. But definitely that just came to my mind, because all students, as they're progressing through middle school and high school, they're going through all these mental changes, physical changes, emotional changes, and they may not always make the A, but always be there to support them, because there's always going to be a grading period, another grading period that's coming behind that, where they can get their grade back up.
Amen. Well, I just want the person to say thank you to all of our panelists. Please give them a round of applause. And thank you to our UAB guests for joining us today. We're going to bring up Brother Beeman, who will give us our final remarks.
Hey, let's give it up for our panelists again. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for loaning your time, your talent, as well as your experiences in helping this summit, this portion of it, to be what it should be. I really appreciate you, and thank you to all of you for being here. A lot of wealth of information and knowledge is going out, and it's always good to put yourself in position to learn. Brother Mickens, the long-term minister here, told me one time that the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement. So I just think, and you can't improve without information. So thank you all again for what you do and what you've done this morning. And thank you for putting yourself in a position to learn, because we look around, we have some issues that need to be resolved, and I think it's summits like this that can help us move the needle in the direction that God would have us go. And what we're going to do, we're going to dismiss, and we're going to have lunch, and those who do not know what the multi-purpose room, let's find somebody who look like they know what they're doing and just follow them. But it's right behind you. We're going to dismiss for lunch, and we will have our a return for thanks and a blessing in the multi-purpose room. Thank you all so much.